Is it fair to say then that there was a question, or let me put it this way, was there a question in 2002 on whether a report had been made? Excuse me, was there a question in 2012 as Shelley was being discussed, whether Shelley had been reported in 2004?
There was not a question. It was taken as a fact that that had already been turned over to the police, and the police had made a decision on it.
And the only fact that was taken from was what Andy Eisenzimmer told you?
I believe that's correct.
And what did he say to you?
He explained that the 3 files, I believe there were 3 files, that had been done by the forensic persons had been taken to the St. Paul Police Department.
Anything else?
No.
Did you inquire further?
I don't believe I did, but I don't have a recollection of having asked that.
When you yourself viewed those images and had the concerns as you've expressed it, Shelley was still in ministry, wasn't he?
Not at the time that I saw those images. No, he had been taken out of ministry.
What date had he been taken out of ministry?
I can't recall that.
How long after then, according to your belief, was it? Well, what was the time differential between his resignation or sabbatical in ministry and you having viewed those images?
I think he was on sabbatical for 6 months, and then he was put on a leave of absence, and so it probably would have been about 8 months, I think. It's my best guess.
Okay. I want to go for a moment to Gallatin. On Joseph Gallatin, I had begun to ask you...
I'm sorry, let me just interrupt real quickly. Anything with respect to Shelley, starting with the Shelley questioning till now when you switch gears, is to be put under seal or noted as under seal pursuant to...
No, it's not.
yes,
Shelley has been a public matter. I have not used anything that has been turned over here. Shelley came up in the first hearing in October of this last year concerning this very matter. It's a very public matter. There's nothing that was made by way of my questions that we consider under seal. If you want to take that position, your position is noted. We're not going to discuss it further.
It is noted, and anything that involves Gallatin is the same, but that is for the record, and we'll have to address that. But for the court, and I raised these issues, that we would make that objection and note that to be addressed later. I'm just telling you, counsel, that it shouldn't be disclosed by you until it's resolved.
So far, any question that I've asked, counsel, has not been in reliance upon any information other than what has already been made public and both known to you and the public and reported. So there's nothing that has been produced in this case that has been relied upon in the questions that I've asked. Later on, we'll get to that discussion, and I'm now going to Joseph Gallatin. Isn't it correct that there was a public disclosure made by the Archdiocese on December 29th, 2013 concerning Joseph Gallatin?
I believe that's true.
So let's talk about that. And that's not under seal, right, counsel? Right?
Gallatin?
Yeah.
No, I think it is, isn't it?
They're the ones that made the public disclosure that Gallatin on December 29, 2013. That's not under seal.
Well, counsel, we have the ones that are under seal. You're aware which is under seal. I'm not going to fight with you here. It's under seal, and if you violate the court order, you take your risk. But we have said that the ones that are under seal are not to be disclosed publicly until we resolve that with the court. You have to bring your motion for good cause.
Let's talk, Archbishop, about the public disclosures and representations made to the people about Gallatin on December 29, 2013. It's correct that the Archdiocese admitted that he had been engaged in inappropriate boundary violations with minors. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Who made the determination that that was not criminal sexual conduct?
I can't say.
If you can't say, why did you allow it to be described as inappropriate boundary violations when it could have been criminal sexual conduct and described as such?
There had been an investigation into this, and there had been a determination made that it was inappropriate boundary violations, that it was not criminal intent.
An investigation by whom?
I'm trying to recall, and I just can't recall right at the moment.
It was an internal investigation done by somebody in the Archdiocese. Is that what you're saying?
I can't recall in this particular instance whether that was turned over to the police or not.
Has the Gallatin file, to your knowledge, ever been turned over to the police in its entirety?
I can't say for sure.
To your knowledge, has any file of any priest accused of sexual misconduct ever been turned over to the police in its entirety, maintained by the Archdiocese?
Again, I don't believe so, but I can't say for sure.
And why do you guys withhold information from police?
Well, again, counsel, you have misstated. No. Can you quit trying to put words in for your sound bites? That is inappropriate,
if you don't like the question,
counsel.
Give me a legal objection to it.
What facts do you have to state that they withheld a request that the Archdiocese provide a file to the police?
Have you ever provided a file to the police?
Have they requested a file? Counsel, your misstatements are inappropriate and you know it.
Have you ever provided a file to the police?
We have provided to the police anything they've ever asked for.
No. Tell me this. First, answer this, yes or no. Has the Archdiocese ever turned over any file to law enforcement concerning sexual allegations and a priest?
And Archbishop, your last answer to his question, which was the same one, was just fine.
Don't instruct the witness how to answer. Did you hear the question?
If you could repeat it again, please.
Has the Archdiocese ever turned over any file to law enforcement?
I don't know.
Have you ever told any of your subordinates or officials to turn over the files in the possession of the Archdiocese to law enforcement to assist them in their investigation?
I have always maintained that whatever the police ask for, we are cooperative and we give them.
So is it your position and practice that you don't turn it over unless they ask?
That is correct.
What if you get a report from somebody other than the police that a priest has abused?
We turn that over to the police.
Yeah, but if the police don't ask, you don't turn it over, right?
No. If we had an allegation that was credible, we would turn it over to the police.
Have you ever told the police that you keep files on each of the priests, both in separate locations, some secret locations, some not so secret?
Objection that it misstates evidence. Again, your games, counsel, ask a proper question, and then he can answer your questions.
There are no secret archives. The files are kept in a room. We had invited the St. Paul Police Department to come in and view that room just a few weeks ago. There's no intent whatsoever to withhold information from the police.
Before a few weeks ago, had you ever told law enforcement about the archival file room where Jennifer Hasselberger retrieved the Shelley materials and the Waymire materials and brought them to you?
And your question is?
Whether the Archbishop's done that?
Yes. Have you ever told police about that archival file before a few weeks ago?
I think they have been informed before that.
By whom?
My understanding in terms of the Shelley case, would have been Mr. Eisenzimmer. He was the one that worked closely with the police.
In connection with Mark Wayman, W-E-H-M-A-N-N, there are some public statements made by the Archdiocese, and I quote in a release done by the Archdiocese, there are several incidents of inappropriate conduct with minors involving boundary violations. Who made the determination to use a descriptor of boundary violations and that it was not criminal sexual conduct?
I believe that would have been an internal decision that had been made on that.
Who made that?
It would have been Father Dan Griffith, who is our new delegate for safe environments.
And do you know what he based that on, or if he interviewed, or what he based such a determination?
Well, I think he knew that it wasn't a question of sexual abuse, and it was inappropriate behavior.
Was that reported to law enforcement?
I don't believe it was, no.
Was Gallatin ever reported to law enforcement?
I have no recollection of that.
So what qualifications does Dan Griffith have to determine what's a crime and what's not a crime? He's the priest, right?
He's a priest, yes. He has a law degree.
I mean, a civil law degree, right?
Civil law, yes.
Yeah. So what qualifications does he have in child detection and the criminal investigation of what constitutes a crime involving children and what doesn't?
I don't know that I can answer that.
There has been some public disclosures concerning Father Keating, and he was either removed from ministry or resigned his position on or about the same day that he was sued. Is that your understanding, Archbishop?
That is my understanding.
Before you get into another one, Counsel, I'm sorry, just Wayman is under seal, as is Keating, if you get into that.
This is public, and it's already out there, Counsel. He's been sued.
But it's our request, it's under seal, and we'll take it up later.
what did you know about Keating and what he had been accused of and how it had been handled before Keating got sued and that suit made public?
The situation surrounding Father Keating happened before my time as Archbishop. I was aware that something was going on when I became coadjutor, because I knew a relative of the person who was involved in the case, but I didn't know, wasn't privy to the case itself, to all the details of the case.
Can you think of any priests that have not either been discussed or identified that have actually, well, let me put it this way. Can you name for me the priests that actually have been reported by the Archdiocese, either you or somebody at your direction, to law enforcement for suspicions of sexual abuse under the Mandatory Reporting Act?
You're talking about since he became Archbishop?
Yes.
The case of the one case under my tenure was the case of Curtis Waymeyer, and we reported that immediately.
You say we. Who is we?
Well, it would have, the information came in to the civil chancellor, and the civil chancellor notified another person on our staff, Father McDonough, who was at the time the delegate for Safe Environment, and he also informed me that Father McDonough and this Deacon Vomastic were being sent over to tell Father Waymeyer at the time to leave the premises and to take a leave of absence.
When did Jennifer Hesselberger first bring to your attention that she believed that Waymeyer posed a risk of harm to the children in the Archdiocese if he was allowed to continue in ministry?
Well, again, you're assuming facts, not an evidence. If that's a statement, I don't know. If the Archbishop can answer whether that came to his attention, listening to what he asked you, that's fine.
Jennifer prepared a memo for me prior to the time that I had made him pastor of Blessed Sacrament of St. Thomas the Apostle, pointing out that 5 years previously he had...
The question was when now? When did she bring this risk to your attention?
You're answering, and that's fine, Archbishop. Counsel, he can answer your question.
No, I asked a question of when now. I'm just trying to get the anchor for the date here, Archbishop.
And he's providing that.
I can't tell you the month and the date, but I think it was in 2008, prior to my making him pastor. He was already parochial administrator of Blessed Sacrament. And we were talking...
So let's just get the when. So we're talking about the right time frame here. You're saying it's sometime in 2008, right?
Correct.
And you're saying that it was when Waymeyer was at what parish?
He was parochial administrator of Blessed Sacrament in St. Paul.
And are you able to identify the month in 2008?
It was shortly after I had become Archbishop. I became Archbishop on the 2nd of May, so I believe it would have been in the month of June.
And at that time, what did you learn about Waymeyer's fitness as a priest to continue in ministry and the risk that may be posed by it?
The information that Jennifer brought to my attention was that Father Waymeyer had a same-sex attraction, that he had approached two young men in their mid-20s at a bookstore of some sort and made an advance on them. That was reported to I think that was 5 years previously. That was reported to the Chancery, and Father Waymeyer was sent off to a rehabilitation program, a clinic, and came back and had it would confirm the fact that he was same-sex attracted, and he was put on the monitoring program. He was to do therapy once a month and spiritual direction once a month. And I obviously didn't see him being same-sex attracted as an indication that he had any interest sexually in young children, or that he was a pedophile. I had no reason to believe that he was, and I believe that he was fit at that time to take on these two parishes.
There's some indication that in February of 2009, Rourke was his monitor. Do you have a recollection of that?
I think that would be true.
And that you signed on to a monitoring plan at that time. Do you recall that?
That I signed on. Could you explain that?
Did you sign on to monitoring plans?
For whom, please?
Each of the priests that were being monitored for sexual abuse?
That program was already in place when I became Archbishop.
But in 2009, in order for somebody to go on monitoring, didn't it require you, or as a matter of practice and protocol, to approve that?
Yes, that would be true.
And when did you place, then, Waymeyer on the monitoring program?
I believe, and I could be wrong on that, I believe that he was on the monitoring program based on that previous incident.
Yeah, I'm looking at some records, and I think that's correct. It looks like he had been on monitoring for 40 years as of 2009. Does that sound right?
That sounds right.
Okay. Did you become aware, at least in 2009, then, that he had been in monitoring for misconduct in 2004 and in 2006 for seeking out sexual encounters with 19-year-olds?
I didn't know about that second incident. I did know about the first incident, which happened, I think, in 2004 in a bookstore somewhere.
And I don't think, Counsel, your words of 18, 19, I don't know that that's what the Archbishop testified to. You can ask him that. Again, you've inserted your own facts. If the Archbishop
I'm asking
knows
if he knew.
that. Well, how is he? Well, he's answered he knew, but you have your little soundbite. It's completely inappropriate, yet again, that you insert your facts or what you want to be the facts for whatever reasons. Let's get to what the truth is and ask the questions that the Archbishop can provide you. Try to get to the truth and not made up facts.
That little speech doesn't count on our time. And look at the documents.
You ask him, and then you can answer. He can answer. If that's what it is, then fine. But don't just say things. Ask him to answer those.
In April of 2009, I think you just said that, well, let me put it this way. In 2009, did you believe that Waymeyer was fit to continue in ministry without informing any of the parishioners and the public that he was on the monitoring program?
that time, we didn't, I don't believe that we had informed the trustees that he was on the monitoring program.
And you didn't inform anybody other than those in the official position of the Archdiocese? So that would be your chancellors, the vicar general, yourself, and the monitors, correct?
At the time, I don't believe so. If that were to happen today, we would disclose to the trustees.
We're talking about in 2009 now, okay?
Mhm.
Is that correct?
Correct.
In April of 2009, do you recall receiving information from Hasselberger about concerns about a change in Waymeyer's status from being the business administrator to being the pastor?
Well, that would have happened, I think, in 2008, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, but she raised concern in 2009 to you, is my question. Do you remember, you made that decision in 2008?
I thought I had, but
Okay.
it could have been 2009.
Okay. Let's assume then that you made the decision in 2008. Do you recall Hasselberger bringing the concern to you about why that was done?
She brought the concern to me that about the incident that I told you about in the bookstore, and that he was same-sex attracted.
And she also raised with you the concerns about the St. Luke's findings that had been made and in the file, correct?
She may have. I don't recall that.
You recall that he had been diagnosed with having sexual compulsion or sexual addiction and unable to control his sexuality?
No, I don't remember that at all.
Did you read the St. Luke's report?
I believe I did, yes.
When?
At that time, before I made him pastor.
When you made him pastor and changed his status from business administrator to pastor, did you know that he was a risk of harm?
I did not know. I
He
would
was?
not have made him pastor if I had known.
He proved to be, didn't he?
Unfortunately.
Did Father Laird warn you against making him pastor?
He did.
And he told you that there are questions about his fitness to be in ministry, much less to be a pastor, didn't he?
He thought he was somewhat unstable.
And in April, was that a yes?
That's what he told me. He said he had an unstable personality. But Father Laird clearly didn't like Father Waymeyer, and there was, I think, a bias there.
So you thought it was a personality conflict between Laird and Waymeyer?
I thought to a certain extent, yes.
And so you didn't think about the fact that Laird was speaking for the safety of the potential children where he was serving as pastor?
Well, there was no indication that he had interest in sexually abusing children. There was no indication at all.
When you read the St. Luke's report and received the other information you've described, at the time you made him pastor and continued him in ministry, did you tell anybody at the parish what you knew about his history as reported in St. Luke's, as raised by Father Laird, or as raised by Jennifer Hasselberger?
At the time, I believed that that was the responsibility of Father McDonough. I found out subsequently that he did not inform the trustees, but normally in those situations at that time, we would have informed the trustees of the parish.
So when did you learn that McDonough had not done what?
I think it was in the last week of September
Of what year?
of 2013.
Did anyone ever tell you, or did you ever learn from review of the file, that Curtis Waymeyer had been restricted from working with youth in 2004?
No.
Have you ever heard that before I made that assertion today?
I have not.
Did you learn that Curtis Waymeyer had gotten a DUI in 2009?
I did.
How?
It was reported to us. It was after I had made him pastor, and it was reported to us, I think, through Father McDonough.
And did you also learn that as a part of that arrest relating to the DUI, he had been trying to solicit some young people to party with him?
I don't recall that as part of the DUI.
What do you recall as a part of the DUI and what you were told or learned?
I learned that he was on a camping trip and that he went into a kind of a 7-Eleven type place, and they noticed that he was unstable in his walk, and someone called the police, and they came and stopped him from driving and gave him the citation.
Were you aware that when he was arrested for the DUI, that he called Joe Keppers as his criminal lawyer?
I was not aware of that. I knew that he was friendly with the Kippers, so it doesn't surprise me.
Were you aware that at the time of that he was still on monitoring?
I was aware of that, yes.
Did you ever see the report or get informed by any of your any of your officials that the report says that he was trying to pick up teenagers to go back to the campground to party?
No, sir.
Having heard that, is that the first time you've heard that?
I believe so, yes. I didn't know that.
Does that alarm you?
It does.
And would it have alarmed you if you had been told that back then?
Certainly would have, yes.
You did know he was on monitoring. You did know
No,
he
I
had
did know he was on monitoring.
I said you
Okay,
did.
okay.
You did know that. You did know about the other things. At that time, after the DWI, did you call Curtis Waymeyer in and say, "I need to get to the bottom of this," and ask him if he had been engaging in inappropriate sexual contact of any kind with anybody?
During that time period, I called him in 4 times from reports that I had gotten in the parish about his anger mismanagement, I would say. But I didn't have the knowledge at that time to question him on his and any sexual activity.
Well, you knew about the St. Louis report. He was a sexual addict. You knew that.
But we hadn't had any. But that had been 5 years before, and he had been in therapy, and he had been in spiritual direction, and the St. Luke's report indicated that he was fit to go back into ministry.
Well, if you had reason to call him in 4 different times to ask him about certain things not pertaining to his sexuality, why didn't you ask him about his sexual conduct or possible misconduct? Didn't you want to know?
Well, those were not things that had been reported to me. There was nothing of a sexual nature that had been reported to me except for the St. Luke's remarks and the report of the 2004 incident.
But sometimes the way you get information, Archbishop, is to ask. And why didn't you ask him?
Because there was no reason to.
The St. Luke's report gave you reason, didn't it?
It did, but that had already been a matter of at least a year, and that I had received that report. No, that would have been in 2004. I'm getting confused here. And I had to deal with the situation of what was current in his administration, and that happened to be the question of his getting along with staff, his anger mismanagement. Those were the topics that were on the table.
Serba was urging you to not continue him in ministry because of his sexual issues, wasn't he?
I don't believe that.
Well, then what was Serba concerned about as expressed to you? It was his sexual issues, wasn't it?
No, Serba never expressed any sexual concerns to me.
What was the basis for him being concerned about his unfitness to be and continue in ministry, if not sexual?
Are you talking about Serba?
Laird, I mean, excuse me.
Okay. He never mentioned anything to me about his whole sexual nature. His concern primarily, as I recall it, was that he said he didn't think he had a stable personality.
Did you ever tell anybody to get the 2009 police report that reflects what I just told you about him and the teenagers?
I did not. I wasn't. I was aware of the arrest, but I wasn't aware of the other incident that you just alluded to.
Did you tell anyone to get the 2009 report?
No, I don't believe so.
You knew there was a police report.
Sure, would have known there was a police report.